The journey to becoming the Pirate King is filled with impossible battles and devastating losses. But what if Luffy had a second chance to correct all his past mistakes? In today's video, we're exploring an alternate timeline where Luffy is reborn with his powers and memories. Our story begins during the Egghead Island arc, where Luffy faces off against the Gorosei for the first time. Despite Luffy's mastery of Gear 5, he finds himself overwhelmed trying to hold off Warcury, Saturn, and Jupiter, while Vegapunk escapes with Sanji. Even though Luffy can damage them temporarily, the Elders have regeneration that borders on immortality, and it was only the arrival of the giant warrior pirates that saved Luffy's life. But in this timeline, Dory and Broggy don't arrive quite in time to save Luffy, and he's swallowed whole by Jupiter, with no way to escape. Meanwhile, Saint Noosjuro and Mars systematically dismantle the Straw Hats' escape plan, trapping Bonnie and Vegapunk as well. Everything seems hopeless for the Straw Hats, and as Luffy's life force is drained away, the drums of liberation slowly stop beating. But the Hito Hito no Mi Maronika has other plans. The Sun God's power refuses to let its chosen warrior die permanently, and Luffy's consciousness is yanked backward through time itself, reincarnating in his 7-year-old body at the exact moment he swallows the Gomu Gomu no Mi. This time, young Luffy wakes up with over a decade of combat experience, complete mastery of all 3 types of haki, and full knowledge of Gear 5's reality warping abilities. He knows every island, every enemy, and most importantly, he knows every mistake. Unlike last time, Luffy immediately understands what's at stake. His crew almost certainly died at Egghead, and without the reincarnation of Nika, the fight against the world government would have been set back by decades. The trauma of that final battle changes everything about how he approaches his journey. Instead of taking his time, Luffy tears through East Blue like a force of nature. His goal is to gather his crew and get them trained as soon as possible so that they can actually put up a fight against the Elders. But there's another factor at play here. Luffy knows that he needs Conqueror's haki users by his side to at least have a chance against the Gorosei and Imu. This shapes his training, recruitment, and much more, as you'll see later on in the story. But back to East Blue, Alvida and Buggy the Clown don't even slow him down, and Luffy has no trouble recruiting Zoro because he knows exactly what to say. But Luffy isn't just recruiting the core crew faster, he's actively seeking them out using his knowledge of future events. Nami joins the crew as a permanent member in Orange Town itself, as Luffy makes a promise to help her take down Arlong. But before that, the crew arrives at Syrup Village weeks early and convinces Usopp to join as well, but not before Luffy lets him go through the battle against the Black Cat Pirates to build his character. At the Baratier, Luffy doesn't even wait for Don Krieg to attack, and he tries to hire Sanji directly by telling him that the Straw Hats will help him find the All Blue. But Sanji is suspicious of how Luffy knows his dream, and at this point, Luffy realizes he can't rush through everything. So he waits for the battle against Don Krieg, where he earns Sanji's respect. But before that, Mihawk inevitably arrives. Luffy doesn't know why himself, but he releases a slight amount of Conqueror's haki to catch the warlord's attention, making Mihawk think twice about battling the Straw Hats. The battle against Zoro remains the same, and Luffy doesn't intervene, as he knows that this is a key part of Zoro's path to achieving his dream. Sanji joins the crew after Don Krieg is defeated, but by the time the crew reaches Arlong Park, their dynamic is completely different. Luffy is even more notorious as a pirate captain, and has a bounty of over 120 million berries by the time he leaves East Blue. At Drum Island, Luffy convinces Chopper to join the crew pretty easily by telling him specific details about Hirulook's final words that convince the reindeer this captain is special. But here's where Luffy's future knowledge becomes truly dangerous. We know that he has only one serious regret before reaching Egghead. Luffy was absolutely broken after Ace's death, and having him as an ally of the Straw Hats would significantly boost their strength, as we know Ace is capable of using Conqueror's haki. Knowing that Blackbeard betrayed Whitebeard to steal the Yami Yami no Mi by murdering Thatch, Luffy makes it a priority to contact Whitebeard directly, warning him about Teach's true intentions. Whitebeard is skeptical at first, but Ace vouches for Luffy's trustworthiness, and while they don't take action immediately, Whitebeard stays on high alert. But Teach isn't an idiot, and he still manages to murder Thatch and steal the Yami Yami no Mi when Whitebeard lets his guard down. But the critical difference is that Ace doesn't go after him alone because Whitebeard stops him, and instead the Whitebeard Pirates' 2nd Division and the Straw Hats enter an alliance against the Blackbeard Pirates. At this point, Luffy begins to realize his most critical weakness. Even if he has knowledge from the future, he's not a good enough strategist to put that knowledge to the best use. Luffy wants to launch a coordinated shadow war against the world government, so he starts gathering allies to help his cause. Luffy knows that he needs to make a major statement to get his ideal partners on his side, so at Sabori, he doesn't just punch St. Charlos, he activates Gear 5 in front of the entire archipelago. The point of this is to send a message to the entire world, and when Kizaru arrives as expected, Luffy is prepared. He doesn't just defend, but he pushes the Admiral back using Conqueror's haki. This moment is critical, as it drives his bounty up even further, but it also catches the attention of two powerful potential allies, Eustace Kid and Trafalgar D. Law. Now, while these two eventually become allies of the Straw Hats in Wano Country, having joined the alliance early on is pretty useful, as Kid is a known Conqueror's Haki user and Law is a master strategist. While they still don't want to join Luffy's crew as his subordinates, the two agree to be Luffy's allies in the upcoming battles against the world government. Moving on to Amazon Lily, Luffy doesn't really have much trouble winning over Boa Hancock, so we don't need to focus on that too much. However, after Luffy reveals that her presence on the island might endanger the Kuja, Boa Hancock leaves Amazon Lily to actively sail with the Straw Hats as a permanent ally, not just an occasional helper. But the bigger question is how Luffy connects with Sabo and the Revolutionary Army, as they're a critical part of any coalition that aims to take down the world government. Before we get there though, the time skip still happens, as Luffy realizes that even though he has Gear 5, his crew is still far too weak to go up against the admirals. But this time, the training is far more coordinated, and Luffy trains with Rayleigh to perfect Gear 5 stamina issues while maintaining contact with his scattered crew through transponder snails. When they reunite, they're not just stronger, everyone is focused on developing Haki in addition to their regular abilities, with Zoro going as far as developing some control over his Conqueror's Haki as well. Moving on to Dressrosa, Luffy still defeats Doflamingo, but Sabo isn't there as he didn't regain his memories of Ace and Luffy because the Summit War didn't happen in this timeline. Instead, Luffy and Ace contact Sabo through Ivankov, and the three brothers finally reunite, marking the beginning of their massive coalition against the world government. The Grand Fleet forms as expected, but this time it includes Revolutionary Army officers, who've been coordinated by Dragon himself. And this is where the strategists of our coalition come in. If anyone can make use of Luffy's knowledge of the future, it's the Revolutionary Army, as they've been terrorizing the world government with far fewer resources than any of the pirate crews. Sabo, Koala, and other key revolutionaries secretly integrate into Luffy's coalition, creating an unprecedented alliance. This draws the attention of Cross Guild, who see Luffy's coalition as a rival power structure, leading them to become an active underworld force competing for influence. Now, even though Whitebeard doesn't fight in any wars, we already knew that he was sick and close to death, so in this timeline, Edward Newgate eventually passes away due to his illness and old age. Since the Whitebeard pirates lack a powerful leader, Luffy is marked as one of the 4 emperors following Whitebeard's death, further strengthening the Straw Hats' Grand Fleet. While Luffy tries to avoid fighting with Kaido and Big Mom, the Beast Pirates still press forward with the new Onigashima project, which forces his hand. And with the defeat of the Beast Pirates and the Big Mom Pirates in Wano Country, the old guard of the 4 emperors finally falls, with Blackbeard and Buggy taking their places. And now we find ourselves at Egghead once again, with Luffy fully prepared to fight off the 5 Gorosei, with his alliance and the giant warrior pirates included. In this timeline, they successfully managed to save Vegapunk, and his knowledge of the Void Century, Joy Boy, and the One Piece is preserved in its entirety. With the world government in disarray, Luffy's path to Laugh Tale accelerates dramatically. But as Luffy's coalition prepares to race toward making him the Pirate King, Luffy begins doubting himself. He's prevented countless deaths and suffering, with Ace still being alive and Whitebeard dying peacefully rather than in battle. But he's also created a world where free will feels diminished. Everyone knows the path he's laid out because they trust his seemingly prophetic knowledge. The final battle against Imu and the remaining Gorosei looms, and he can't predict what happens next. But Luffy finds himself questioning whether this accelerated timeline was worth the sacrifice of having an authentic journey. So, what do you think? Did Luffy's reincarnation improve the world, or did his godlike intervention strip away the very freedom he fought to protect? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.